Shalom Israel, Shalom, Shalom. Brother Naquam, watchman for Israel, coming back at you with these precepts and another cold cut. Giving, of course, our honor and glory to Yahweh. By Shema Mashiach, Malak Yabushai. Double honors to the elect elders of the house of David that's been in this truth for decades and decades, patiently waiting for the second coming of Mashiach Malak Yabushai. A hearty, mighty Shalom to all of the mighty men of the Most High God who are out there in the highways and byways, pushing this truth, magnifying the ministry, presenting their body as a living sacrifice, and doing all things for the elect's sake. Shalom, shalom. Shalom to all of the men that may not be out there in the highways and byways as of yet, but they're working on it. They're getting built up in the spirit. They're praying. They're fasting. They're studying. They're being diligent and abounding in the work of the Lord. Shalom, shalom. Shalom to all of the Aquap out there, the sincere sisters out there, holding it down in the households, reverencing their husbands, being submissive and diligent, and moving in the spirit of our righteous foremother. Shalom, shalom. And Shabbat Shalom to everybody tuning in live. Yolanda Caesar, HBK Int, Renee A, Brother Believe, Yafei Israel, Ephraimite Ak, Nigel Blends, T Sellers, Love Pius, Taylor B, Spirit and in Truth, Shanika Jenkins, Ainan Shah, Shalom King, Sis, Dusty, Mariah Israel, T Sellers, and everybody else tuning in and will tune in through the spirit and power of Yahweh by Shema Mashiach Malak Yabushai. Peace and blessings to the elect of Israel scattered abroad throughout the four corners of the earth. The topic of this cold cut, right? Daniel 11 chapter finally explained, or entire chapter finally explained, volume 1, right? Last week we covered Daniel the 10th chapter, principalities and powers, and we went into how Yahweh by Shema Yabushai operates and orchestrates these physical kingdoms and how they transition by using the angels and the spirits on a day-to-day basis or throughout the ages. And also, as you segue into the Daniel 11 chapter, it goes into detail about these different kingdoms, chiefly the Greek kingdom and how that kingdom was divided. And it dives into two main kingdoms within that Greek empire. And we'll touch on that as well. So we're going to try to cover as much as we can. This obviously this is going to be a part 2, right? When you read Daniel 11 chapter, I believe it's 45 verses. I mean, it's extremely detailed. That the prophecy is so detailed that you have even Christians and certain people who are skeptics saying, well, this had to have been written after these events happened, because they're saying there's no way that one man could prophesy all of these major events. So Daniel 11 is the most complex prophecy in the entire Bible, right? You got and Daniel 11, 2nd Ezra 11 and 12, Revelation, the 20th chapter, Ezekiel, some chapters in Ezekiel, Zechariah. These are complex chapters and dark parables and allegories in the Bible, right? So we want to cover this entire chapter as much as we can. We may have to do a 3-part series. It may be a 2-part, maybe a 4-part series every Shabbat, and kind of go through this entire chapter through the spirit and power of Yahweh Bashmi Yabushai. All right, so let's go dive right into it. Daniel, the 11th chapter, through the spirit and power of Yahweh Bashmi Yabushai. All right, so let's dive into it. Right, Daniel 11, and we'll start at the top. Right, we'll start at the top. This is the book of Daniel, chapter 11 and 1. Also, I, in the first year of Darius the Mede, even I stood to confirm and to strengthen him. Now, who's speaking right here? The angel. This is the angel that was speaking to Daniel in the 10th chapter, right? When you go to Daniel, the 10th chapter, this is Daniel 10 and verse 11. And we covered this, right? When you read Daniel 10, Daniel 11, Daniel 12, they're running back to back to back. It's the angel breaking down to Daniel everything that's going to happen in the last days, right? From the time of the Persians to his current state to the future state where the Greeks rule, all the way up to the end of the world, right? And when we say the end of the world, all the way up until this time. So this Daniel 10 and 11. And he said unto me, O Daniel, a man greatly beloved, understand the words that I speak unto thee, and stand upright, for unto thee am I now sent. And when he had spoken this word unto me, I stood trembling. Then said he unto me, fear not, Daniel, for from the first day that thou didst set thine heart to understand, and to chasten thyself before thy God. Thy words were heard, and I am come for thy words. Right? And we covered this in the previous Shabbat, in Daniel 10th chapter, right? Verse 13, but the prince of the kingdom of Persia withstood me 120 days, and lo, Michael, one of the chief princes, came to help me, and I remained there with the kings of Persia, right? And I remained there with the kings of Persia. So let's go back. Here's the point. Now I am come to make thee understand what shall befall thy people in the latter days. But yet the vision is for many days. So this prophecy that Daniel's about to get in chapter 11 and chapter 12 is for many days. It's going to cover the Persian Empire, right? A few years after Daniel. It's going to cover the Greek Empire. It's going to cover all the way the time. It's going to touch on the Romans when you get to certain parts of Daniel 11 chapter. Then Daniel 11 chapter is going to go into the latter days. It's going to focus more on the end of the world. Even the 12th chapter is going to focus on the end of the world, right? So it covers many times and many ages. So this is the same angel speaking unto Daniel, Salakia, for lack of better terms, right? Bear with me, just to get the understanding. So let's jump down. Verse 19. I'm going to start at 18. Then there came again and touched me one like the appearance of man, and he strengthened me. So the angels can strengthen men. And said, O man greatly beloved, fear not, peace be unto thee. Be strong, yea, be strong. And when he had spoken unto me, I was strengthened, and said, let my Lord speak, for thou hast strengthened me. Because Daniel was weak. A lot of the visions and spirits that he saw, it can affect your physical body, man. Right? You could pass out. People got sick. Some men fainted. So the angels have to come and strengthen you, because that spirit overrides the flesh and your body can't really comprehend. Neither can it handle high level visions and dreams. It wasn't created to do that. So the Most High has to send an angel to strengthen your body. Right? Verse 20. Then said he, knowest thou wherefore I come unto thee? And now will I return to fight with the prince of Persia. And when I'm going forth, lo, the prince of Greece shall come. And we covered that. But I will show thee that which is noted in the scripture of truth. And there is none that holdeth with me in these things, but Michael, your prince. So he's going to show him the scripture of truth and strengthen him. This is immediately going into Daniel 11 chapter. Also, I, in the first year of Darius the Mede, even I stood to confirm and strengthen him. And now I will show thee the truth. That's still the angel speaking. The angels, they reveal, like we read, the scripture of truth. They strengthen you, and they're going to break down to Daniel what's going to happen. It's the exact same angel that came to him. And now I will show thee the truth. Behold, there shall stand up yet 3 kings in Persia, and the 4th shall be richer than they are. And by his strength, through his riches, he shall stir up all against the realm of Greece. So you have 3 kings in Persia. This is the Achaemenid Empire. This is what you call the Achaemenid Empire, or you may call it the Persian Empire, right? You have many kings of the Persian Empire, but this is focusing on 4 kings, your first 3 and your 4th king. Cyrus the Great, Cambyses II, Bardiya, Darius, Xerxes. These are all many kings. Now, your first king was Cyrus the Great. We'll talk about these 3 kings, and we'll touch on the 4th. Right? We'll go through this quick history. Right? So your first king is Cyrus the Great. Right? He actually, and there's so much history. Salakia. There's so much history on each one of these men. Now, Cyrus the Great actually revolted against his father-in-law, Astyages, who ran the Median Empire. The Median Empire was over the Persian Empire. But Cyrus the Great came out of Persis, which was a small province of the Median Empire, and actually overthrew his father-in-law, Astyages, to establish the Persian Empire. Right, let's see if we can get that. Right, let's pull this up. All right, let's see if we can get some quick history. We'll do Medes. Right? Pull this up. So this is actually that's his grandson, right? So Astyages was the last king of the Median Empire, reigning from 585 to 550 BC. The son of Cyrus, he was dethroned by his grandson, Cyrus the Great. So that was actually his grandson, right? So Cyrus actually helped overthrow the Assyrian Empire, along with Nabopolassar, right? And another king, they overthrew the Assyrians around 612 to 609 BC. And then the Medes became the primary ruler of the earth at the known time. So it transitioned from the Assyrians, and then the Medes took over, right? Then the Babylonians, and then the Persians, right? Where Cyrus actually helped overthrow the Babylonians, right? So he had a grandson named Cyrus the Great. Cyrus the Great actually took over the Persian Empire, and he annexed the Medes into his empire. All right, that's exactly how this man came into power, right? And he's actually was taken captive, right? He was actually taken captive by Cyrus the Great. And this is how Cyrus became the first king of Persia. Now, I'm not going to read this entire chapter or this entire account of how the Persians took down the Medes, but you can see Persis was a small province under the entire Median Empire. And Cyrus the Great actually rebelled and overtook the Medes. And Ecbatana, which was a chief city that you read about in the book of Tobit, it played a prominent role in the defeat of Astyages, and Cyrus the Great, or Cyrus II, actually came into power at this time, right? Actually came into power at this time because Cyrus, who was over the Medes, helped take down the Babylonian Empire. All right, or the Assyrians rather. So let's go back to this. Let's go back to Cyrus the Great. He's the first king that you're reading about in the book of Daniel. It's like your Daniel, the 11th chapter. These three kings, your first king is Cyrus the Great, who took down Astyages of the Median Empire around 550 BC or so. Right? And Cyrus the Great, you can actually read about him in other accounts in the scriptures. Right? Let's go to Isaiah chapter 44. Right? Isaiah chapter 44 and verse 28. That saith of Cyrus, he is my shepherd and shall perform all my pleasure. Even saying to Jerusalem, thou shalt be built, and to the temple, thy foundation shall be laid. So Cyrus was prophesied by Isaiah hundreds of years before Cyrus was even born. That's what a lot of people say, well, I don't believe the Bible, because there's no way Isaiah would know that. Well, the Most High deals with prophecy, man. Even Enoch prophesied of Yahushua in the book of Jude. Noah prophesied of the flood. Our father, Moses prophesied of slavery, man. You know, on ships in the transatlantic slave trade. So there's nothing strange about Isaiah prophesying about Cyrus. Why is Cyrus called a shepherd? Because the Most High used him to send Israel and guide them back to Jerusalem to build the temple. He was a vessel used by the Most High, right? So Cyrus is prophesied all throughout the scriptures, chiefly the Old Testament. 2 Chronicles chapter 36. So everybody that says, well, the Bible isn't real, that's a white man's book. How in the hell can a so-called white man write the Bible? When did he write it? First of all, I always got three questions when I hear that. Which white man wrote it? Because you say the white, well, which one did it? And when did he do it, man? Because to cover such a vast amount of history and accredit that to one so-called white man or the white man in general is absolute blasphemy and madness. There's no way this man could know about and write and document over 5,000 plus years of history, man, and know about Cyrus and speak about Antigonus and speak about Antiochus Epiphanes IV and go into Pharaoh Necho, Pharaoh Hophra, and Cyrus and Astyages and Cyrus and Xerxes and all of these prominent rulers that you read about in the Bible. The Seleucid Empire, right? The Ptolemaic Empire, Herod, right? Herod Agrippa. These are historical figures that walk the earth. That you can go to any university. You can go to Yale, Harvard, Dartmouth, Brown, Cornell, Cambridge, Oxford, all of these world-renowned colleges and universities. They will tell you that those men walk the earth, man. Right? So this is not a fictitious book. Cyrus lived, man. And even though he was a heathen, he was prophesied that he would be used as a vessel to take Israel out of their captivity and send them back. That's why you read about Zerubbabel, Joshua. They all went back, man. All right, to build the temple with other of our fathers. 2 Chronicles 36 and 22. Now in the first year of Cyrus, king of Persia, that the word of the Lord spoken by the mouth of Jeremiah might be accomplished, the Lord stirred up the spirit of Cyrus, king of Persia, that he made a proclamation throughout all his kingdom, and put it also in writing, saying, thus saith Cyrus, king of Persia, all the kingdoms of the earth hath the Lord God of heaven given me. See that? So all these heathen know that they know about the Most High. Don't get it twisted, man. Don't act like these elites, these presidents and prime ministers don't know about Yahweh, right? Everybody knows about the Most High. Maybe not these mortal men and average Joe Schmoes that walk the streets, man. But these elite rulers and these powers that be, they know about the Most High. They know these records and accounts. Cyrus, he wasn't an Israelite, but he knew about the Lord. Right? The Lord worked with these Persian kings, these Greek kings, man. They knew about the Most High. Alexander the Great knew about the Most High. Abimelech, the king of the Philistines, he knew about the Most High. Pharaoh, he knew about the Lord, man. Right? So don't get it twisted. Cyrus said, all the kingdoms of the world, of the earth, hath Yahweh, the Most High of heaven, given unto me. And he hath charged me to build him an house in Jerusalem, which is in Judah. Who is there among you of all his people? The Lord, his God, be with him, and let him go up. See that? So that's the word fulfilled by Jeremiah when he said 70 years shall be accomplished. Right? We'll be in captivity 70 years. Cyrus will come into power, and he would relinquish us, and we will be allowed to go back to our own land. So that first king you're reading about in the scriptures, the first king that you're reading about in Daniel 11th chapter. Let's get one more. Isaiah chapter 45 and 1. Thus said the Lord to his anointed, to Cyrus, whose right hand I have holden, to subdue nations before him, and I will loose the loins of kings, to open before him the two-leaved gates, and the gate shall not be shut. So the Lord is again speaking about putting Cyrus in a position of power. That's why the title says it perfectly. God uses Cyrus like he used Pharaoh to harden his heart. You understand? Like he's using Esau to destroy him, to raise him up. Even for the same purpose have I raised thee up, that I might show my power in thee, and that my name might be declared throughout all the earth. Right? So again, that's your first king right here. Your three kings in Persia, your first one is Cyrus. All right, Cyrus the Great, or Cyrus the Second, who overran the Medes around 550 BC, took down Ecbatana and Astyages, and became the sole ruler of the known world at that time. And he established then the largest kingdom to ever exist, geographically speaking. Right? When you look up the Persian Empire, right, we're going to cover a lot of history. Right? We're going to cover a lot of history as we go through this Daniel chapter 11 series. We're going to do our best to leave no stone unturned, right? Through the spirit and power of Yahweh B'Shem Yahushua. So again, this is not going to be a one-time lesson, man. We're going to cover a series, right? Make a volume. So this is volume 1. And as we go into this history, we have to link it directly up with the Bible, man. All right? Because it is in the Bible. The Bible's not just about, okay, grow your beard out and put your fringes on. Or as a woman, put a dress and a head wrap on. The Lord said in Sirach 5 and 15, be not ignorant in anything, in a great matter or a small, right? So this is Daniel 11, and this is that Persian Empire. Now, there were 127 provinces from India, as you look on the screen right here, all the way to Ethiopia, south of Thebes, right? So they had 127 provinces that covered 3 continents, so-called Africa, Asia, and Europe, the first of its kind to span 3 continents. 127 provinces. Let's get that in Esther. Right, this Esther chapter 1 and 1. Now it came to pass in the days of Ahasuerus, that is Ahasuerus, which reigned from India even unto Ethiopia, over 127 provinces. Right, a province is like a state. Right, certain countries they have provinces. Canada, you have Nova Scotia, you got British Columbia, right? Calgary, Alberta. They don't really have states, right? They got provinces and cities. America has states, right? Other countries, they have provinces, right? So when you go back to this, you're dealing with that first king, Cyrus, who established that entire empire. You had another king, because the prophecy says what? There shall stand up yet 3 kings in Persia, and the 4th shall be richer than they are. Right? You can also go into, let's go into the book of Daniel, the 7th chapter, about Cyrus and the Persians. Daniel chapter 7 and verse 5. Right, so Daniel 7 speaks about 4 major kingdoms, right? The Babylonian Empire, the Medo-Persian Empire, the Greek Empire, and the Roman Empire, right? And the Roman Empire extends all the way to America. So when you read this, we're going to read about the Persian Empire. Daniel 7 and 5. And behold, another beast, a second, like to a bear, and that raised up itself on one side, and it had 3 ribs in the mouth of it, between the teeth of it. And they said thus unto it, arise, devour much flesh. So this bear that raised up itself on one side is the Medo-Persian Empire. And it raised up itself on one side because the Persians took down the Medes, like we covered. Cyrus the Great took down Astyages around 550 BC. Some scholars say 552, right? Circa that time, he took them down, took down Ecbatana, and established his kingdom. So they went from being a joint empire to being one sole empire. That's what it means. They raised up itself on one side. And it had 3 ribs in the mouth of it. So it devoured 3 smaller beasts. What are the 3 ribs that they devoured? Well, the Persians devoured 3 smaller kingdoms, right? They devoured first the Babylon, or really the Lydian Empire. If you want to deal with the order of when these kingdoms were conquered, 545 BC, Cyrus II, or the Great, conquered King Croesus at the Battle of Thymbra around 545 BC, specifically during a siege of Sardis in Ionia, which you know now is Asia Minor. That's the first rib. King Croesus was taken down. And then we encourage brothers to dive deep into this history. King Croesus decided to winter his troops. In the ancient world, you would take your troops and you would send them back home, or you would send them in a fortress or in a specific fortified city during the wintertime. Seldom did soldiers fight during the wintertime, and that's why in the book of Second Samuel 11 chapter, right? There's a time that kings go forth to battle, right? Let's go to 2 Samuel. It's like I want chapter 11, right? 2 Samuel chapter 11. 2 Samuel chapter 11 and 1. And it came to pass, after the year was expired, at the time when kings go forth to battle, that David sent Joab and his servants with him and all Israel, and they destroyed the children of Ammon and besieged Rabbah, but David tarried still at Jerusalem. So the time that kings go forth to battle is the so-called springtime. All right, that early March transition to April, late March, early April kind of area or time frame. So when you study this first rib that was taken down, the first rib was taken down at the time that kings don't go forth to battle. because they were taken down in the wintertime. All right. Cyrus the Great and his ingenuity and using the element of surprise and going against the grain decided to, instead of winter his troops, to use his troops to take down King Croesus as they were resting and use the element of surprise to conquer them. So that first rib was taken down in 545 BC. Let's actually, I didn't have that planned, but let's actually pull that up real quick. Let's see Battle of Thymbra. Right, so you have to know these decisive battles as well when you're dealing with history and prophecy. The Battle of Thymbra was the decisive battle in the war between Croesus. And he was a rich king, man. He was a wealthy king, the king of the Lydians, right? Between Croesus of the Lydian kingdom and Cyrus the Great of the Achaemenid Empire. Cyrus, after he had pursued Croesus into Lydia, after the drawn battle of Tyria, met the remains of Croesus' partially disbanded army, see that, in the battle on the plain north of Sardis in December. So he went in the wintertime. See that? And December 547 BC, that was unheard of, to send your troops out in the wintertime. Croesus' army was about twice as large and had been reinforced with many new men, but Cyrus still utterly defeated it. That proved to be decisive, and after the 14-day siege of Sardis, the city and possibly its king fell, and Lydia was conquered by the Persians. See that? So that Battle of Thymbra is what you need to know, and the siege of Sardis, right? 2-week siege where Cyrus defeated King Croesus. If you want to dive deeper into that, by all means do so, right? Now, that's the first rib that fell in Daniel, the 11th chapter. We're still dealing with the first king, too. And we read this, you'll stand up, yet 3 kings in Persia. The first king is Cyrus. Cyrus took down that first rib, which was King Croesus of the Lydian Empire. Let's look up Lydian Empire. So here's your Lydian Empire. It's where your so-called one of your 7 churches. Sardis, right? Smyrna, Ephesus, right? So Cyrus actually came here and took this kingdom down. Took down Cyrus. All right, it's like he took down Croesus. Now you had another rib that was taken down next, and that was your Babylonian Empire. Your Babylonian Empire was taken down by Cyrus as well, right? Cyrus the Great actually came into Babylon at the Battle of Ahapra, right? And defeated the Babylonians in 539 BC, if I'm not mistaken, right? So let's pull up the Battle of Ambra or Afra. I'm pronouncing Slakia. Battle of Slakia. Bear with me. Pronouncing it wrong. Slakia. Apis. Slakia. Apis. To Afra. Battle of Apis. So the Battle of Apis was the last military or major military engagement between the Achaemenid Persian Empire and the Neo-Babylonian Empire, which took place in September of 539 BC, right? Let's jump down. The Persian king Cyrus the Great was subsequently proclaimed as the king of Babylonia and its further territories, thus ending its independence and incorporating the entirety of the fallen Neo-Babylonian Empire into the greater Achaemenid Empire. So the Battle of Apis, right? The Battle of Apis was the decisive battle that transitioned the Babylonian Empire into the hands of the Persian Empire, right? And Nabonidus, he was the last king of the Babylonians. Right? You read about Belshazzar and Daniel as well, right? Scholars debate. The Bible says Belshazzar. Nevertheless, the Achaemenid Empire defeated the Neo-Babylonian Empire. That was the second rib that was taken down. But you had a third rib. The third rib was not taken down by Cyrus the Great, but it was taken down by his son. His son is Cambyses II, right? Now, Cambyses II took down the Egyptians at the Battle of Pelusium, right, in 525 BC. 525 BC, aka the battle of what they call the Battle of Cats, right? This is history, man. Right? Again, these Persian kings were military minds, right? So what they did was it's called the Battle of Pelusium because it happened in Egypt. If you look up Pelusium, right? Let's pull this up. Battle of Pelusium. We can pull it up on the map. Here's the Battle of Pelusium. Right? Hold on, let's get an image right here. A victory decided by cats. So we're not going to read this whole thing, but we'll cover it, right? So what happened was the Persians threw cats in the battlefield because the Egyptians worship cats. So as they put cats in their shields and cats in the battlefield, the Egyptians said, well, hold on, these are our gods. Can't fight against these men. They have our gods on their shield, and our gods are coming against us. Let us surrender. Let us not fight as strong as we should fight. And thus, the Persians were easily able to overcome the Egyptians, right? Because these Egyptians worship cats. So they said, we're going to put cats all in our shields. Look at this guy. We're going to throw cats at him. And believe it or not, these simple-minded, bird-brained fools, the Egyptians, sought these cats to be their gods and said, well, I don't know what to do. How do we fight? And thus they were slain by the edge of the sword. 525 BC, the Battle of Pelusium defeated the Egyptians, and thus the Persians became sole rulers of the known world. These are your three ribs in the mouth thereof in Daniel 7th chapter. That's what he said, arise, devour much flesh, because they defeated kingdom after kingdom after kingdom after kingdom. And they came into power. And that's why we have these three kings in Daniel, the 11th chapter. All right, so let's go back to Daniel 11th chapter. These three kings could be an entire lesson within itself. So your first king is who? Cyrus the Great, right? Who defeated again Astyages and rebelled against the Medes and conquered them, his grandson, right? Your second king is, and he also defeated King Croesus at the Battle of Thymbra, specifically the siege of Sardis around 545 BC. Your second king is Cambyses II, who defeated the Egyptians in 525 BC. Right? Then you had a third king, a lesser king. Right? Let's pull up the lesser king or your third king. Let's go back to this. So Cyrus the Great. Right? Then you had Cambyses II, which is actually his oldest son. Right? Cambyses II. And again, you can read more about these men's lives. You could dive into it, who they married, how they came into power, etc. Right? But right now we want to kind of touch on a surface level. Right? And your third king was actually Bardiah. Right? You had Bardiah. So you had Cyrus, you had Cambyses, you had Bardiah, or rather Cambyses, Bardiah, Darius, and Xerxes. Right? So you had Slakia, Cambyses, Bardiah, Darius, and Xerxes. So let's go back to this. Right, Daniel 11th chapter. And the fourth shall be richer than they all. So the fourth one that's richer than them all is Xerxes. So Cyrus was their first king, but to clear it up, Cambyses II, Bardiah, and Darius. Right, Darius the first. And your fourth king was Xerxes the first. Right, just to clear that up. And that one was richer than they all. And by his strength, through his riches, he shall stir up all against the realm of Grecia. You see that? So he stirred up all against the realm of Grecia because Xerxes the first actually invaded the Greeks. But his father before him, Darius, also invaded the Greeks. All right, his father before him invaded the Greeks. Let's go into that. Right, let's go into Darius. When you pull up Darius the first. All right, let's pull this guy up. Darius the Great or Darius the First. He actually originally stirred up the Greeks because he led an invasion into Greece. Let's pull this up. Let's pull up the first or the Greco-Persian Wars. So the Greco-Persian Wars were a series of conflicts between the Achaemenid Empire and Greek city-states that started in 499 BC and lasted until 449 BC. Right? The collision between the fictitious political world of the Greeks and the enormous empire of the Persians began when Cyrus the Great conquered the Greek-inhabited region of Ionia in 547 BC. Right? So you had a great war between the Greeks and the Persians. All right? You had a great war between the Greeks and the Persians. And they invaded them, but they were defeated at the Battle of Marathon. So the Battle of Marathon took place during the first Persian invasion of Greece. It was fought between the citizens of Athens, aided by Plataea, and a Persian force commanded by Darius and Artaphernes. The battle was the culmination of the first attempt by Persia under King Darius I to subjugate Greece. The Greek army inflicted a crushing defeat on the more numerous Persians, marking a turning point in the Greco-Persian Wars. See that? So you have something called the Greco-Persian Wars. And this is the Persians going out their way to invade Greece. But they were defeated. That's why you got something called a marathon, because as the legend goes, you had a man that ran 26 miles to declare the victory. And he said Nike, which is a Greek word that means victory, to the leaders of the Greek Empire. Right? Said, we have defeated the Persians. Then they say he dropped dead, man, afterwards. So that Nike, it means victory. And it comes from the Battle of Marathon, right? Or a marathon is that so-called long race, and it's taken after the Greeks and how long this man ran to bring glad tidings to his own people. All right. So you have one invasion that failed in 490, around 494, but the battle ended in 490 BC. Right? Persian forces driven out of mainland of Greece for 10 years. So this is a 1900 depiction of the Battle of Marathon. Now, when you go back to Daniel 11th chapter, the third king, right, which was Darius the first, fought against the Greeks, right? Then you had a fourth king. The fourth king that was richer than they all was Xerxes. Xerxes the first actually fought against the Greeks too, right? This king actually fought against the Greeks. He led another invasion into Greece to avenge his father that failed. So his father Darius failed the first and was defeated. Xerxes is the one that you watch in the movie 300, right? Xerxes is the one with they show him with all of the chains on and, you know, the gold necklace on, and he got the massive army and they carrying him, right, on a massive damn step stool and stage. He's that king you read about in that movie, man, or watching that movie. Where is that at? Okay, I had a picture. Oh, here. This guy, right? This is the guy that they feign that man after. All right, it won't let me go to it. Salakia. But you've seen it. If you've seen the movie, you've seen it. If you didn't, you know, you should check it out. All right. So that's who they feign themselves. This is the fourth king, richer than they are. And they show his riches, man. He was taking a bath in gold. He had the women around him, right? He had a massive army. They thought it was an earthquake. So he's that fourth king in Daniel, the 11th chapter. And when you read Daniel chapter 11, it says, and by his strength, through his riches, he shall stir up all against the realm of Grecia. Because his father essentially did it on a smaller level, but he used his army to fight against the Greeks. And his loss actually put the Greeks into the position of power. That's called the Second Persian Invasion of Greece. Let's pull that up. This is the Second Persian Invasion of Greece. The Second Persian Invasion of Greece occurred during the Greco-Persian Wars as King Xerxes I of Persia sought to conquer all of Greece. The invasion was a direct, if delayed, response to the defeat of the first Persian invasion of Greece at the Battle of Marathon, which ended Darius I's attempts to subjugate Greece. Now, here's the point. After Darius' death, his son Xerxes spent several years planning for the second invasion, mustering an enormous army and navy. The Athenians and Spartans led the Greek resistance. So we get that 300 from, right? About a tenth of the Greek city-states joined the allied effort. Most remained neutral or submitted to Xerxes, right? The invasion began in spring of 480 BC when the Persian army crossed the Hellespont and marched through Thrace and Macedon to Thessaly. The Persian advance was blocked at the pass of Thermopylae by a small allied force under King Leonidas I of Sparta, right? So that's where you get 300 from, King Leonidas and the Spartans, right, who fought against the Persians. All right. Now, I'm not going to read this whole thing, but when you read this account, they were defeated, right? The Persians, again, were defeated. They went by land and by sea. So here's the land force marching up from Ionia, coming down. And when they went to Thermopylae, it was a big deal, right? Then they went by sea, and they were also defeated. They were defeated by sea and by land. Let's jump down. Simultaneously, the Persian fleet was blocked by an allied fleet at the Straits of Artemisium. At the famous Battle of Thermopylae, the allied army held back the Persian army for 3 days before they were outflanked by a mountain path, and the allied rear guard was trapped and annihilated. All right. So when you read this account, the Greeks actually used their military might to defeat the Persians. All right. Let's jump down. I'm not going to read this whole thing. The Greeks would now move to the offensive, eventually expelling Persians from Europe, the Aegean islands of Ionia, before the war finally came to an end in 449 BC with the Peace of Calais. And that's what ended the Greco-Persian Wars. So you had two invasions of the Greeks. One was by Darius I, who was that third king, and another was by the fourth king, right? The fourth king that was richer than they all was Xerxes. And Xerxes I, he led another invasion into Greece, which also failed like his father. Why did it fail? Because the Most High set the Greeks up. All right, Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahushua set the Greeks up. Every kingdom has an appointed time in which they can rule. And it's not up to them to how long they're going to rule. These things have been ordained by the Most High. But you may say, well, how could such a great empire that covered 127 provinces be defeated by the Greeks? Well, the Lord did that, man. The Lord did that. Job 14:5. Seeing his days are determined, and the number of his months are with thee. Thou hast appointed his bounds that he cannot pass. See that? So the Lord has these nations on a timeline. And they can't say, well, I want to rule 400 years. Okay, the Greeks, they want to rule forever. Okay, the Romans want to rule for 290 years. No, man. You're going to rule from here to here. Your bounds are going to be from India to Ethiopia. See, these are his bounds. So this is his time and his land. His months is the timeline of how long the Persians are going to rule, and the bounds are the boundaries on what land they can start at and what land they're going to end at, and they can't pass either. So if you're going to be from India to Ethiopia from roughly 552 to 333 BC, then that's what it's going to be. All right. So despite your invasions and you mustering up a massive army, the Lord had plans to bring up the realm of Grecia on the scene. All right. So this is how the Persians were ultimately defeated. And then you had another major battle. Another major battle was by who? Philip II of Macedon. You had his son, Alexander the Great. You had all of these men that fought against the Persians. Let's pull up Philip II. I believe I had him. Philip II of Macedon. Right? Philip II of Macedon. He was the father of Alexander the Greek of the Argead dynasty. He was another prominent member of the realm of Grecia. Right? Philip II of Macedon was the king of the ancient kingdom of Macedonia from 359 to 336 BC. He was a member of the Argead dynasty, founders of the ancient kingdom, and the father of Alexander the Greek, Seleucus the Great. Right? The rise of Macedon, including its conquest and political consolidation of most of classical Greece during his reign, was achieved by his reformation of the army. So he established a new military formation called the phalanx. The establishment of the Macedonian phalanx that proved critical in securing victories on the battlefields. His extensive use of siege engines and his use of effective diplomacy and marriage alliances. Right? So he was an innovator and a military mind that helped lead to the overthrow of the Persians. We'll put it at that. All right. After defeating the Greek city-states of Athens and Thebes at the Battle of Coronea in 338 BC, Philip II led the effort to establish a federation of Greek states known as the League of Corinth, with him as the elected hegemon and commander-in-chief of Greece for a planned invasion of the Achaemenid Empire Persia. So you see what Xerxes started? That's why I say he should stir up. When you look at that word stir up in the Hebrew, it means to awake, right? So he awakened the massive army of the Greeks. He got them started, man. He got Esau started. Now Esau, which is, these are Edomites, they said, well, look, we're going to invade the Persians, which are predominantly Elamites. All right, at the time. Let's read on. For a planned invasion of the Achaemenid Empire, that's your Persians. However, his assassination by a royal bodyguard, Pausanias of Oratus, led to the immediate succession of his son Alexander, who will go on to invade the Achaemenid Empire in his father's stead. You see that? So this is how Alexander the Great comes into power. His father was going to do the deed first, but the Lord cut him down. Because the Lord didn't want Philip II to get the glory. He wanted Alexander to get the glory because prophecy has to be fulfilled. Philip II had a mind. He may have very well done it, but the Lord killed him. And he raised up another king. All of these kings we're reading about, these three kings, reading about Cambyses II, Bardiya, Darius the first, even though the first king was Cyrus, like I said, and the fourth king is Xerxes, the Lord raised up all of those kings. He raised up Philip. He raised up every world leader that you know of today. There's not anybody that ruled the earth that wasn't set up by the Most High. Let's go to Wisdom of Solomon, the 6th chapter, right? Let's go to Wisdom of Solomon, chapter 6. Wisdom of Solomon, chapter 6, and verse 1. Hear therefore, O ye kings, and understand. Learn, ye that be judges of the ends of the earth, right? For give ear, you that rule the people, and glory in the multitude of nations. For power is given you of the Lord, and sovereignty from the highest, who shall try your works and search out your counsels. So the Lord said, listen up, kings, and understand. Everybody that's a king and a judge, you have to understand that power is given you of the Lord. Pharaoh was given power of the Lord. The so-called white man now, he was given power of the Lord. Those kings, Cyrus, he was given power of the Lord. The first king in that prophecy, Cambyses II. Bardiah, he was given power for a brief time. Darius I, which was the third king, he was given power at that time. The fourth king, Xerxes, he was given the power of the Lord. Right? Philip II of Macedon, he was given power of the Lord. And ultimately, Alexander the Freak, he was given, or the Great, he was given power of the Lord. Let's read this one more time. Daniel 11:2. And now I will show thee the truth. Right? Behold, there shall stand up yet 3 kings in Persia. So their very first king was the Persians. But the kings in prophecy, again, is Cambyses II, Bardiah, and Darius I. Those are these 3 kings. Right? And the fourth, which is Xerxes I, shall be far richer than they all. And by his strength, through his riches, he shall stir up, meaning awaken all against the realm of Grecia. So we see what happened. His father Darius led an invasion, defeated at the Battle of Marathon, around 490 BC. His son, Xerxes I, led an invasion, around 480 or so BC, and he was also defeated. And then Philip II said, look, we defeated them, now let's actually invade them. But he was assassinated, and now the realm of Grecia is setting up their final king, which is Alexander the Great, right? The Freak. Verse 3, and a mighty king shall stand up, that shall rule with great dominion and do according to his will. And that's Alexander the Great. He's the mighty king that stood up and ruled according to his will. Let's go to the book of Daniel, the 8th chapter. Let's prove that. Right? Daniel, the 8th chapter. Because Daniel prophesied of that. Right? Daniel prophesied that the Medes and the Persians being defeated, or the Persians defeating the Medes and then the Greeks defeating the Persians. He prophesied of Alexander, his 4 generals, right? Antiochus Epiphanes IV. So this is Daniel chapter 8:2. And all of these, some of these prophecies go hand in hand. Daniel 2, Daniel 7, Daniel 8, Daniel 11, all speak about the Persians and the Greeks. And Daniel 2, the Persians and Greeks are the arms in the chest of silver. You know? In Daniel 7, the Persians and the Medes are the bear that raised up itself on one side with 3 ribs in the mouth thereof. In Daniel 8, the Persians and the Medes, it's the ram with 2 horns that are high, and one was higher than the other. So you can read about the Persians in 3 different prophecies, right? Really 4, because in Daniel 11, it's speaking about the 3 kings of Persia. Same thing with the Greeks. You can read about the Greeks in Daniel, the 2nd chapter. They are the thighs and the belly of silver. Of brass. The thigh and the belly of brass. And in Daniel 7th chapter, they are the leopard with 4 heads and 4 wings. And in Daniel 8th chapter, it's the rough he-goat with a notable horn between his eyes. And in Daniel 11, it's speaking about the mighty king that shall stand up. Right? So the Greek Empire is all throughout the scriptures. Right? So this is Daniel 8 and verse 2. And I saw in a vision, and it came to pass when I saw that I was in Shushan in the palace, which is in the province of Elam. And I saw in a vision, and I was by the river of Ulai. Then I lifted up mine eyes and saw, and behold, there stood before the river a ram which had 2 horns. And the 2 horns were high, but one was higher than the other, and the higher came up last. So again, these 2 horns that are high is the Medo-Persian Empire. The one that's higher than the other are the Persians. They defeated the Medes. We covered that. Cyrus the Great defeated Astyages. All right. And that's the higher that came up last, which is the Persians. I saw the ram pushing westward and northward and southward. That's that Persian vast empire, 127 provinces, so that no beast might stand before him. right? The Lydians couldn't stand before him, the Babylonians, the Egyptians. No rib or no beast could stand before this beast, right? So that no beast, meaning no country, kingdom might stand before him. Neither was there any that could deliver out of his hand, but he did according to his will and became great. It's that vast Persian empire. And as I was considering, behold, an he-goat came from the west on the face of the whole earth and touched not the ground. And the goat had a notable horn between his eyes. So as that Persian empire came into power, the Greeks came from the west. Right? Where's that Persian empire map at? Right? Here's the Persian empire in the west, Macedon. And here's how he would come and conquer step by step the entire Persian empire. At Macedon, Miletus, Gordium, Damascus, came down into Alexandria, came into Egypt, came into Babylon, Susa, Persepolis. This is a step-by-step process of how the Greeks conquered the Persians. So they came from the west. And it said, the prophecy says that they touched not the ground. Right? You ever see a cheetah or a leopard move and it seemed like they're floating, man? Because they're moving so fast. So the swiftness and the speed of Alexander's military conquest was unprecedented, unheard of at the time for someone so young at the age of 20 to conquer the entire world in such a brief time. I believe by the age of 32, Alexander conquered the entire Persian Empire. And as he defeated the Persians, the legend goes that he actually cried, man. Some would even say he got depressed after he defeated the Persians, and his generals, Hystiapes, Perdiccas, all of these men came to him, Lucius, Antigonus. Well, why are you crying? What's going on? And the legend says that Alexander the Great cried because there was no more people to kill. Right? There were no more people to conquer, so he started crying. And he tried to comfort him, said, that's okay. We'll find more people to kill. Right? So that's what this means. He touched not the ground. And the goat, meaning the Greeks, had a notable horn between his eyes. The notable horn is Alexander the Great. That's their notable power, their notable strength. And he came to the ram that had two horns, which I had seen standing before the river, and ran unto him in the fury of his power, because Alexander the Great went to war with the Persians. And I saw him come close to the ram, and he was moved with choler against him, and smote the ram, and break his two horns, because Alexander defeated the Persians, and there was no power in the ram to stand before him. But he cast him down to the ground and stamped upon him, and there was none that could deliver the ram out of his hand. So Alexander defeated the Persians, and the chief man he defeated was Darius III. Right, he defeated Darius III. Let's see. Alexander the Freak defeated Darius III at the Battle of Gaugamela. And we'll touch on that. Right? So Alexander III of Macedon, better known as Alexander the Great, was the son of King Philip II of Macedon, who became king upon his father's death in 336 BC, and then conquered most of the known world of his day. He is known as the Great both for his military genius and his diplomatic skills in handling the various populaces of the regions he conquered. He is further recognized for spreading Greek culture, language, and thought from Greece throughout Asia Minor, Egypt, and Mesopotamia to India, and thus initiating the era of the Hellenistic period. So that's Alexander the Greek. He was a known war general and an avid homosexual. You're going to put that out there too, right? So he's the so-called white man's top general to ever walk the earth, right? He's the so-called white man's top, along with you got Julius Caesar, you got Titus Vespasian, George Washington, Napoleon, right? These are top Edomite generals, man. and war leaders, but nobody seems to be supreme over Alexander the Great, right? And again, here's his military conquest. Close out the Battle of Marathon. Close out some of these, right? Here's his military conquest. See that? Now, his decisive battle that we're reading about in Daniel the 8th chapter, when it says he smote the ram, was at the Battle of Gaugamela. And brothers know we've covered that. Pull up the Battle of Gaugamela. The Battle of Gaugamela, aka the Battle of Arbela. This is the final battle between the Persians and the Greeks. Yeah, we read about the Battle of Marathon, Thermopylae, but the Battle of Gaugamela was not just any battle. This was the transitioning of kingdoms. Just like the Battle of Apis transitioned the Babylonians into the Persians, or the Siege of Sardis, or Battle of Thymba transitioned the Lydians into the Persians, or the Battle of Pelusium transitioned the Egyptians into the Persians. The Battle of Gaugamela was in like manner. It transitioned the power of the Persians into the hand of the Greeks. Let's go to Ecclesiasticus, the 10th chapter. Let's get a precept on that, right? Because that's what happens in war, man. Right? That's what happens in war. You conquer a land, you take over their people, their landmass, and their riches. This is Ecclesiasticus chapter 10 and verse 8. It reads, because of unrighteous dealings, injuries, and riches got by deceit, the kingdom is translated from one people to another. So that's why kingdoms transition from one heathen to another heathen, because of sin, theft, murder, lies, deception. That's why the Persians lost their kingdom, man. Hey, even Belshazzar, the Lord told him, hey, the handwriting was on the wall. Many, many tickle you farson. Right? You have been found wanting and weighed in the balance, and your kingdom is given to the Persians and the Medes in Daniel 5th chapter. Because he sat and praised the gods of gold, silver, and wood, man, and brass and iron. All these heathens have served Satan and diverse gods and have not lived in righteousness. That's why the Most High punishes them and takes their kingdom and gives it to another people. That's what we read in Wisdom of Solomon, the 6th chapter. Power is given unto you from the Most High, who shall search out your works. So if the Most High looks at that kingdom, sees how wicked it is, he's going to take that kingdom and give it to another people. And if they're wicked, he's going to take it, give it to another people. And guess who's going to have it all when it's all said and done? The Israelites and the kingdom. Now, are we going to give our kingdom to somebody else? No. It says the kingdom shall not be left to other people. In the book of Daniel, the 2nd chapter, I believe 44 and down. Or in Revelation 11 and 15, the kingdoms of this world, or the kingdoms of this world, are become the kingdoms of our Lord and his Mashiach. Right? So eventually, in due time, we're going to take all these kingdoms and they're going to be translated to us, chiefly to Yahweh Shai. But we'll be joint heirs in the kingdom underneath Yahweh Shai. Right? So let's go back to this in Daniel. So him smoting the ram is at the Battle of Gaugamela. All right, let's read this. The Battle of Gaugamela, also known as the Battle of Arbela, took place in 331 BC between the forces of the army of Macedon under Alexander the Great and the Persian army under Darius III. It was the second and final battle between the two kings, and is considered to be the final blow to the Achaemenid Empire, resulting in its complete conquest by Alexander. See that? So here's the Alexander being victorious over Darius III. Darius III was the last ruler of the Persians. He was defeated by Alexander the Great at the Battle of Gaugamela. That's what Daniel 8 is talking about. Him smiting the ram is the Battle of Gaugamela, aka the Battle of Arbela. All right. So that's that notable horn. That is Alexander the Great. And it's explained later in the chapter. You say, well, no, you're making that up. How do we know it's not an actual literal horn? How do we know it's not this man or that man? Well, let's jump down. Let's see. Right? Daniel 8 and 20, because the vision is actually broken down by the angel. Daniel 8 and 20. The ram which thou sawest having two horns are the kings of Media and Persia. And the rough goat is the king of Grecia. And the great horn that is between his eyes is the first king. So their first king is this same mighty king in Daniel 11 chapter. That's Alexander. Right? So Alexander ruled the known world at that time. Right? He ruled the entire known world at that time. Now, ultimately, Alexander died, man. Right? He died. Let's see if they cover that. There's a lot of debate on how he died. Some say, okay, he died in battle. Some say he was poisoned. Some say he fell sick. Right? A lot of Israel say maybe he had AIDS. Well, that's what we say. We think he had syphilis, man, or AIDS, or he died of some vile sexually transmitted disease. Right? Now, can we prove that? Can we say, okay, well, look, we got the proof, we got his records? No, we can't prove that. But we do know he was an actual homosexual, man. You watch that movie, man. You can barely watch the movie. It's a decent movie, but it's madness in there. Right? Alexander, I believe it's called Alexander. It got Colin Farrell in it, who's actually playing Alexander the Great. It's a long movie, but it showed a freakism. Alexander the Great movie. Right? Came out almost 20 years ago. See, that's Philip II, Alexander, right? And that's his general. I believe that's Hystiapes in the movie. And he actually was a lover. They were lovers. And the famous quote, like we always say, there's a famous quote from Alexander's scribes and historians. And it's the Alexander could never be conquered. No, not by the Persians. No, not by the Medes. Not by the Assyrians. There's only one thing. This is what they say. There's only one thing that can conquer Alexander the Great. And that was his general's thighs. The only thing that could conquer Alexander the Great was the thighs of his general. So that's madness, man. So that shows he was an actual sodomite. So his sickness more than likely had to be related to his acts that he did with his generals. Right? So he died in a great sickness. And one of his top generals, let's see. Right, let's see. Hold on, let's see. Let's see if we can get this. See, there's questions were Alexander the Great and Hephaestion lovers, right? So there's always talk of him and his lovers, man, right? Alexander the Great and his lovers. So we're going to tell the truth about this guy, man. So he died of some strange sickness. Maybe it was between him and his lovers. Nevertheless, he died, man. Right, so let's go to this. Let's go to his death. Okay, let's see. Bear with me. Let's jump down. See, he died of unknown causes. Esau know everything, man, but he don't know how this man died. Why don't he just own up to it? Just say what it is, man, and stop beating around the bush. He died of unknown causes in 323 BC without clearly naming a successor. Or, according to some accounts, his choice of the commander Perdiccas was ignored, and the empire he built was divided among the Diadochi, right? So Alexander the Great died, and it's prophesied in the Bible. Let's read that. Daniel 11 and 3. And the mighty king shall stand up, that shall rule with great dominion and do according to his will. And when he shall stand up, his kingdom shall be broken. So standing up, meaning you're at the peak of your kingdom, in your prime. Alexander died in his prime. He didn't die as an 80-year-old man, as a child or a boy. When he stood up, when he became a man, he reached around 32, he was broken. He died, man. Let's get that in Daniel, the 8th chapter, right? Daniel 8 and 21. And the rough goat is the king of Grecia, and the great horn that is between his eyes is the first king. Now that being broken, so he died. That's what that means. Now that being broken, whereas 4 stood up for it, 4 kingdoms shall stand up out of the nation, but not to his power. So after Alexander died, he had 4 generals that actually took over his kingdom. All right. You had Lysimachus, Cassander, Ptolemy, and Seleucus. Those are the 4 generals, or 4 men that stood up. Let's read that in Daniel 7th chapter. All right, let's go to Daniel, the 7th chapter. Those are those 4 generals. This is Daniel chapter 7 and verse 6. This is dealing with the Greeks. After this I beheld, and lo, another like a leopard, which had upon the back of it 4 wings of a fowl. The beast also had 4 heads, and dominion was given to it. So Daniel 7 and 6 goes into the Greek Empire. And this beast is likened to a leopard. The swiftness for Alexander to take these worldly kingdoms down happened as if a leopard is running in the open plains, right? And it had upon the back of it 4 wings of a fowl. The 4 wings are the 4 different kingdoms, right? The 4 regions: Macedon, Thrace, Asia Minor / Mesopotamia, and Egypt. And then the 4 heads are the 4 men that were given those regions. Macedon, right? You had men like Cassander, right? You had Seleucus, who was given parts of Asia Minor, Mesopotamia. You had Ptolemy, who was given parts of Egypt. You have Cassander, who was given Thrace, and he fought against Macedon. So you had these 4 major generals. Now, after Alexander died, these 4 heads started fighting. Now, really, when you dive deep into the history, even before these 4 heads came into power, you had other heads that fought as well, man. Men like Perdiccas, Antigonus, other generals. When Alexander died, it was a big deal. They actually fought over 2 things. The number one thing they fought of is where we're going to bury his body at. They actually fought and said, we're going to bury his body in Babylon. No, let's take his body and bury it back in Macedonia. Or let's take his body and bury it back in Egypt. So they fought over that. And the second thing they fought of is, well, who got next? Perdiccas said, I'll rule. Then another general said, no, we'll rule. So they were fighting over who was going to rule. And we'll read about that in Daniel 11th chapter. Let's go back to Daniel 11th chapter. Right? This is Daniel chapter 11 and verse 3 again. And a mighty king shall stand up, that shall rule with great dominion and do according to his will. That's Alexander. You watch that movie, man. You'll see Alexander's power, his wealth, his glory, his honor, right, that he had on the earth at the time. And when he shall stand up, his kingdom shall be broken and shall be divided toward the 4 winds of heaven. That's what we read, the 4 wings of a fowl, because fowls fly in the wind. Now, the 4 winds are those different regions, right? By those 4 heads. Thrace, we'll put up a map and show you. Macedonia, Asia Minor / Mesopotamia, and Egypt. Those are the 4 winds of heaven. And again, those 4 heads are those 4 major generals. He had many generals, but the prophecy only talks about his 4 major generals. Ptolemy, who had parts of Egypt. Seleucus, who had parts of Asia Minor. And he actually defeated Antigonus and took a lot of those lands and cities from him. You had Cassander and Lysimachus, who had Thrace and Macedonia, right? So his kingdom was divided to the 4 winds. and not to his posterity, nor according to his dominion which he ruled. For his kingdom shall be plucked up, even for others beside those. So what does this mean, not to his posterity? What is your posterity? Flip the definition of posterity. Posterity means your descendants, right? Your descendants is your posterity. So when Alexander died, naturally, like any kingdom, the kingdom would pass to your son. Alexander had a son, right? He actually had an illegitimate son. When you dive deep into the history, and he had a son of Roxana, which was his wife. And when Alexander died, his son that was in his wife's womb wasn't born yet. So it would be an easy thing if your son is alive, like David. He gave the kingdom to his son Solomon. Solomon, he gave the kingdom to Rehoboam. Rehoboam gave it to Abijah. Abijah gave it to Asa. Asa gave, and they passed the kingdom down. Right? That's how kingdoms operated in the ancient world. There was no republican system or a democratic system where you vote for an elected official to speak on your behalf, or there was no power to the people. Ancient kingdoms worked by posterity. One man died, his son ruled next. He died, his son ruled after him. So when Alexander died, what the prophecy is saying, that the kingdom that was divided wasn't divided to his son. Right? Let's actually go into that. But it was given to his generals. And it wasn't as strong as Alexander's kingdom, because no kingdom divided against itself is as strong as a kingdom that is solidified and unified. So let's go into his death and kind of talk about that through the spirit and power of Yahweh Bashem Yahushua. Here's an ancient painting of Alexander's death. Here's Alexander right here. Here's his pregnant wife. And here's his generals. His top men, what they call satraps, mourning over his body. Antigonus, Perdiccas, Seleucus, Ptolemy. There's another general, Lysimachus, right? And other men that fought over his body. He said, where we're going to bury his body. Who do you want to rule next? This is the famous painting. They have one in color too, right? This is a black and white one, but they have another one in color that every scholar knows that this was a big deal after the death of Alexander and his kingdom being divided toward the four winds of heaven. Here's Alexander's family tree, right? To show you what his posterity should have been. So you're looking right here, right? Amyntas III, right, of the Argead dynasty, right? Then he had Eurytus. Eurytus had a son, two sons, right? Or four. The main sons in history are Perdiccas III and Philip II. Philip II was slaughtered, assassinated by one of his bodyguards, right? Philip II had Alexander III as a son, right? He had Alexander III. Alexander the Great, or the Third, his son by Roxanne that you see right here, his wife, was Alexander IV. Heracles was his so-called illegitimate son, because nobody really knew, okay, is that his son? Is that not his son? You know, what the hell is going on? So the kingdom was actually supposed to be given to Alexander IV, but it didn't happen. That's what the prophecy says, not according to his posterity, because the kingdom wasn't passed the way that a natural kingdom should flow, right? There was a big deal going on, man. A lot of fight over who will rule. This is where you get the term Diadochi from, or successors, right? The successors of his kingdom actually fought. Now, there was something, let me close that out. One of his top generals that played a major role in his death. Now, the legend goes that when Alexander died, you know, he knew his son wasn't to be born yet, so he would pass the kingdom to Perdiccas. Now, Perdiccas isn't one of the four winds that you read about in Daniel 11 or Daniel 7 or Daniel 8, but he was also one of the top men at that time. He had another man that was next to him. Now, Perdiccas, right, let's read a little bit about this man to kind of go through this history. Perdiccas was the general under Alexander the Great who became regent of the Macedonian Empire after Alexander's death. A regent is somebody who's a de facto king, because you may have a son that's young in age. A lot of these kings had men or sons that were like 8 years old, right? 7, and the fathers would die. But you being 7 and 8, you can't call no shots. So there would be a regent that would take over until that son became the age of a man. Sometimes a woman would be a regent, like a queen, these mothers, or sometimes generals could become regents. So he was a regent until Alexander IV. That was the actual plan. So Alexander IV became king. All right. So let's read a little of this. Perdiccas served with distinction in Alexander's campaign, and upon Alexander's death, led the aristocratic party that supported the claim of the unborn child of Roxana, Alexander's widow, to be the succession. So he wanted Alexander's son to rule, but he really wanted power because he knew that if it would be passed to his generals, Alexander's generals, Perdiccas wouldn't be able to be regent. So he said, look, if we can make Alexander's son next king, I have time to rule until he becomes a man. So that was Perdiccas' plan, right? After a compromise, under which a division of the powers of regency was arranged, Perdiccas exercised a wide authority in Asia as quote-unquote supreme general, and soon began to act as if he meant to make himself king. See that? This move was resisted by the regional governors, Ptolemy in Egypt, Antigonus in Phrygia, and by Perdiccas' colleagues in the regency, Crates and Antipater. So when you read this account, he got cast out. Perdiccas was ultimately cast out and murdered, right? He tried to fight against Ptolemy and was defeated. Let's read that. Perdiccas marched against Ptolemy, which was another general of Alexander, but when he failed to cross the Nile, he was murdered by mutinous officers. Let's go to 1 Maccabees, chapter 1, right? 1 Maccabees, chapter 1. Let's read about Alexander's generals coming on the scene. 1 Maccabees, chapter 1, and verse 1. It reads, and it happened, after that, Alexander, son of Philip, the Macedonian, who came out of the land of Kittim, right, meaning Greece, has smitten Darius, king of the Persians and Medes, that he reigned in his stead the first over Greece. So that links up with Daniel 7, Daniel 8, Daniel 11, right? Battle of Gaugamela. And made many wars and won many strongholds and slew the kings of the earth and went through to the ends of the earth, speaking of Alexander, and took spoils of many nations, and so much that the earth was quiet before him, whereupon he was exalted and his heart was lifted up. And he gathered a mighty strong host and ruled over countries and nations and kings who became tributaries unto him. And after these things, he fell sick and perceived that he should die. You see that? So he fell sick around the age of 32 or so and perceived that he should die. Wherefore he called his servants, such as were honorable and had been brought up with them from his youth, because certain men were actually raised up. They were taught by Aristotle, right? Aristotle was he was also a sodomite, and he raised up a lot of these men that Alexander was generals with, man, and parted his kingdom among them while he was yet alive. And the story goes, he actually gave it to Perdiccas. And then some stories say, well, he told me, you're going to get this, Cassander, Antigonus, right? So there's a lot of ambiguity when it comes to how the kingdom was actually divided by Alexander. All right. So Alexander reigned 12 years and then died. And his servants bare rule everyone in his place. And Perdiccas bare rule, right? And he was cast out. Then you had other men that bear rule. And after his death, They all put crowns upon themselves. So it was like reservoir dogs. So did their sons after them many years, and evils were multiplied in the earth. Now, what does that mean? Salakia. When the Most High said evils, how do I go back? All right, that's all right. When the Most High said evils were multiplied in the earth, that means when the so-called white man came into power, evil increased. Sodomy, pedestry, pedophilia, robbery, rape, murder, deceit, guile, deception, madness, folly, lewdness, profanity, perversion, wickedness, idolatry, fornication. All these things were multiplied, exasperated 100-fold when the so-called white man came into power. Why do you think they take Maccabees out of the Bible? Well, they take it out because it's showing you straight up and down what happens when Esau's in power. When Esau, the so-called white man, comes into power, evil is multiplied in the earth. Let's go to Proverbs chapter 24 real quick. 29. Right, Salaki. This Proverbs chapter 29 and verse 16. When the wicked are multiplied, transgression increaseth, but the righteous shall see their fall. You see that? So when there's more Edomites on the earth, you're going to have more sin. Why do you think the prophecy in Isaiah 14 and 21 says what it says? When you have more wickedness on the earth, you have more sin. More Edomites, more sin. Let's get the prophecy. Isaiah 14 and 21. Isaiah chapter 14 and 21. Prepare slaughter for his children, for the iniquity of their fathers. Here's the reason. That they do not rise, nor possess the land, nor fill the face of the world with cities. Because every time the wicked come into power and they possess the land, they're wicked in the land. Right? They're crossbreeding animals in the land. They're popping the animals in the land. They're building lewd, idolatrous temples in the land. They're freaking off in the land. And God knows what's really going on in these cities. So rather they're in the land, and rather than in these cities, every time they fill the face of the world with cities, where they made Corinth, Thessalonica, Pergamos, that's called the Satan's seat, man. What do you think is going on in Vegas? They call it Sin City, openly. They're proud about it. Oh, I'm Sin City. Vegas, New York, LA. I saw this, it was this link on End Time Headlines, and they had the 10 top cities, the most wicked cities for adultery. I think that was it. They took a survey and they said these are the 10 most wicked cities for adultery. Atlanta, Vegas, New York, Miami. That's wickedness, man. They're making bombs, cloning people, harvesting organs, wicked sacrifices, baby blood, illuministic ceremonies and strange rites, murder, molestation. So in Maccabees, when they were put on the earth, evils were multiplied in the earth. Let's go to Proverbs chapter 28 and 28. Let's get this. It reads, when the wicked rise, men hide themselves. When they perish, the righteous increase. See that? So when there's wicked men in power, nobody really wants to be seen. Either they're going to get raped, robbed, and murdered. Right? So they kind of hide themselves. When they die, people can come out and there's peace. All right, there's peace on the earth. All right, let's go to Psalms chapter 12. Psalms chapter 12 and 8. The wicked walk on every side when the vilest men are exalted. Who's the vilest men? Is it the Ishmaelites? Yeah, they're wicked, but are they the vilest men? Is it the Hamites? Yeah, they drink blood and wash and bathe in urine and eat mud pies and mosquito pies. But are they the vilest men? Who takes the cake? Is it the Moabite man who'll eat a squid alive and rice and mice and dogs and cats? Yeah, that's unimaginable. But is he the vilest man? Who's the vilest of them all? Who's the MVP of wickedness, man. Right? Who's the worst of the heathen? Pursuant to Ezekiel chapter 7. Esau, the Edomite. Who's the Edomite? The so-called white man who feigns and calls himself German, Italian, Dutch, English, French, Spanish, Portuguese, Greek, Macedonian. The wicked are everywhere, man. When you exalt the vilest, nastiest men, because the Most High said, as Sirach 10:1, as the judges, so are his officers. And what manner the ruler of the city is, such are they that dwell therein. So if you got wicked rulership, don't be surprised when the people are wicked, man. Right? Why do you think there's so much sodomy on the earth? Because these men that run the system are sodomites. Same thing with the Maccabees. It's like with that you read about in Maccabees concerning the Greeks. So the point of the matter is in Daniel 11, when it says that his kingdom will be divided and not to his posterity, it's really speaking about that, yeah, although his son was supposed to rule, it didn't happen. Men fought. Perdiccas fought against Ptolemy. Ptolemy essentially defeated him, right? Because he was assassinated by his own people. And in process of time, Alexander's kingdom was given to generals. Now, originally, before Seleucus was a major power, Antigonus was a general, Cassander, Lysimachus, and Ptolemy. But Seleucus I, he actually came and defeated Antigonus out in Mesopotamia and parts of Asia Minor, and he became that fourth wind or that fourth head, right? So let's read that. Actually, let's go to that history, right? Let's get this. And so we read about Perdiccas, right? Let's get, geez. I had, oh, here it is right here, right? So this is something called the Partition of Babylon, right? The Partition of Babylon was a council in Babylon, ancient Babylon, which is modern day Iraq, concerning Alexander's generals about who was going to rule next, right? So you have to know about the Partition of Babylon or the Partition of Persepolis or Tripodisius to kind of break down who ruled next and how did that power come to be, right? So the Partition of Babylon links directly up into Daniel the 11th chapter and Daniel 7th chapter, right? So the Partition of Babylon was the first of the conferences and ensuing agreements that divided the territories of Alexander the Great. That's what we read in Daniel 11, right? His kingdom shall be divided. This really happened at the Partition of Babylon. So let's finish this, right? It was held at Babylon in June 323 BC. Alexander's death at the age of 32 had left an empire that stretched from Greece all the way to India. The issue of succession resulted from the claims of the various supporters of Philip Aridius, which is Alexander's half-brother, and the unborn child of Roxana, which was Alexander IV. The settlement saw Aridius and Alexander's child designated as joint kings, with Perdiccas serving as regent. So Perdiccas was really supposed to be the top dog, but he got proud and he got deceitful and he had ulterior motives, so he got cut down. The territories of the empire became satrapies. Those are like different parishes, different counties, different states, right? Divided between the senior officers of the Macedonian army and some local governors and rulers. The partition was solidified at the further agreements of Tripodisius and Persepolis over the following years and began the series of conflicts that compromised the wars of the Diadochi, right? So it led to the wars of the Diadochi. Now here's the Partition of Babylon, right? Here's how Alexander's kingdom was originally divided before the four major kings. Right before Lysimachus, Cassander, Seleucus, and Ptolemy, you had major officers that were given these different states. Philip had Bactria, right? Or Bactria. You had certain men that had Perseus, right? like Pusistas. You had Ptolemies, right? Or Ptolemies, who was given Carmania, which is modern day Iran, right? You can read about Carmania in Second Esdras, the 15th chapter. You had men that was given Thrace, like Lysimachus. You had Antipater, right? That was given this region. So this is how his kingdom was divided. Ptolemy had Egypt, right? Now, all of these men have fought amongst each other in some form or fashion. And out of all these officers, only 4 men survived and reigned. Other men were conquered. The men that remained was Lysimachus. He held it down in Thrace. Another man was Ptolemy. He continued his rulership. And you had other men that would come on the scene, Antigonus and Seleucus and Cassander. Here's Antigonus. He actually took over more land, right? And then you had other men that came on the scene. So here's the original partition of Babylon, the notable Diadochi, or your notable successors. And it gives you each state and the man that ruled, right? And the man that ruled. And then after that, they fought amongst each other, and only 4 men came out on top. The 4 men that came out on top are these 4 winds that we'll touch on one more time. That is Ptolemy the First, Soter. That is Cassander, right, who had Macedon. You had Thrace, right, which was a region ruled by Lysimachus. And you had Seleucus the First, who also ruled parts of Asia Minor, all right, and Mesopotamia. Let's get another map on that. So that's the partition of Babylon. I had an actual map. So here's a map, right? And 315 BC. So the map we showed that I just showed you, the partition of Babylon, was like 323 BC. And then a few years later, it changed. Right now, you got 4 major kings. Antigonus in the orange is a map legend or a map key. Each color signifies the region of that king. Antigonus is the orange, right? You have Ptolemy, who has the yellow. Cassander, who has Macedonia. Thrace is done by Lysimachus. You have these other kingdoms. These are the original 4 winds, but these aren't the 4 winds that you read about in Daniel 11th chapter, because Antigonus is not one of those 4 winds, because he was conquered. So we'll see in 310 BC how Alexander's empire looked. See that? So you go from 315, and you're going to see blue. Look at this blue come out of nowhere. See that blue? That blue, now Seleucus is on the scene in 310 BC, and he's eating up the empire of Antigonus. He came on the scene, invaded, and started taking over piece by piece the Antigonid empire. And he's actually the 4th wind. All right. And then in 301 BC, you're going to watch another major change. You see that? See how that orange is completely gone? So in a span of roughly 15 years, what the hell happened to Antigonus? He's gone. He's out the scene. He's finished, man. And Seleucus becomes the sole ruler of Mesopotamia, Syria, and parts of Asia Minor. Now let's see. This is the timestamp of the prophecy in Daniel 11 with the 4 major winds. Right? Let's see what happened in 276. Now you only have the Antigonid dynasty who came out west, Ptolemy and Seleucus. And then in 130 BC, you have the Parthian Empire that came on the scene. The Romans took over. And now you just had, this is the time of the Maccabees. You just got the Seleucid and the Ptolemaic dynasty. But right now, we just want to focus on this timeline with these 4 major kings: Cassander, who had Macedon; Lysimachus, who had Thrace and Ionia; Ptolemy, who had parts of northern Egypt and the Levant; and you had Seleucus, who had Asia Minor and Mesopotamia. right? These are your four major wins in Daniel 11. So let's read this again. Daniel chapter 11, right? And verse 4. And when he shall stand up, his kingdom shall be broken, because Alexander died of AIDS, and shall be divided toward the four winds of heaven. We read how his kingdom was divided. Perdiccas fought. Other men fought. They all fought over his body, man. They all fought over his body. Perdiccas, Ptolemy, and Seleucus argued over every conceivable resting place for the dead king's remains. They all fought over his body. Perdiccas, Ptolemy, and Seleucus. The kingdom should have been given to his posterity, Alexander IV, but it wasn't given to him. Right? It was divided up amongst his generals. That happened at the partition of Babylon in 323 BC. And that's what kicked off those four major generals. Right? Those four major generals that we read about. Right? Your four major generals. So let's go back to Daniel 11. And shall be divided toward the four winds of heaven, and not to his posterity. So it wasn't given to his seed line, nor according to his dominion which he ruled, because his kingdom was divided. Right? For his kingdom shall be plucked up, even for others besides those. Right? So his kingdom was divided and given to others. We read who those four others are. Right? We read who those four others are. And that's what kicked off what you call the wars of the Diadochi. Diadochi means successors. Right? The wars of the Diadochi, or wars of Alexander's successors, were a series of conflicts that were fought between the generals of Alexander the Great, known as the Diadochi, over who would rule his empire following his death. The fighting occurred between 322 and 281 BC. Right? So everybody want to talk about black on black crime. Or y'all kill each other. All right, y'all shoot each other. Or y'all rob each other. Talking about the so-called black, Hispanic, and Native American men. But what about this, man? What about the Civil War? What about World War I? World War II? What about these wars, man? For almost 100 plus years, y'all were killing each other. So we don't want to hear that, Esau. Y'all are the true thugs, man. Right? Y'all are the true people y'all killed millions of people, man. I mean, millions of your own people. These are all Edomites fighting amongst each other over who's going to rule next. Right? Over who's going to rule next. So 322 to 281 BC. Here's another map. I like this one right here. It's kind of detailed, man. Right? Let me pull that map back up. See that? So down here, you can see Regnum. This is Latin, right? If I'm not mistaken. Regnum, Cassander meaning the kingdom, right? That's the Latin. Regnum meaning the kingdom of Cassander, kingdom of Lysimachus, kingdom of Ptolemy, and kingdom of Seleucus. Those are your four major kingdoms. See the Seleucus in the yellow? Right? And the orange is Lysimachus. He had Thrace and Ionia, and Macedon was given by Cassander, and the blue Egyptus was given to Ptolemy. These are your four wins. All right, your four wins. Now let's read back in Daniel 11. So it reads, for his kingdom, Daniel 11 and 4, for his kingdom shall be plucked up, even for others beside those. And verse 5, and the king of the south shall be strong, and one of his princes, and he shall be strong above him, and have dominion. His dominion shall be a great dominion. So now, when you read about those four wins, those four major generals, from Daniel 11 and 5 on down, is speaking to a certain point, right? You get to a certain point at Daniel 11, it's going to switch, and we'll touch on that. We'll touch on what that's actually going into, right? When you get to a certain point in Daniel 11, it's no longer talking about who you think it's talking about, and we'll prove that, right? But right now, in verse 5, it's speaking about the king of the south and the king of the north. The king of the south is the Ptolemaic Empire or the Ptolemaic dynasty. The king of the north is actually going into the Seleucid dynasty. Now, the king of the south shall be strong. The king of the south is Ptolemy. He had rulership from the time of Alexander's death at the partition of Babylon all the way up until even the Roman Republic came on the scene. They were always in power, and he had a very strong military might. But guess who was stronger above him? When it says that one of his princes, the his is still speaking about whose kingdom it was. Whose kingdom was it? Alexander. One of his men or one of his princes is Seleucus. And Seleucus was strong above him. So Seleucus was strong above the king of the south. Because when you look at the Seleucid Empire, his empire was stronger and his military might was stronger than that of the Ptolemies. And it says, and have dominion, his dominion shall be a great dominion. How great was his dominion? Let's look at it on the map. How great was the dominion of Seleucus? All right, let's pull it up on the map. Let's see. All right, we have all this I want to get into. Okay, let's see. So check this out, right? Look at the great dominion of Seleucus the first Nicator. Right? Almost from India all the way down. So his dominion was strong above the Ptolemaic dominion. That's what Daniel 11 is saying. Yeah, Ptolemy was strong, but he didn't have as much as Seleucus. Seleucus is the king of the north. Why is he called the king of the north? Because the directional point is taken from where Israel is at. When you look at Jerusalem, Seleucus is north, Egypt is south. That's why it's called the king of the north and the king of the south. All right. So Seleucus was strong above Ptolemy. And that's why the prophecy says his dominion. He should have dominion. His dominion should be a great dominion because he was given the strongest dominion and the largest dominion by the Most High over all the other generals. Right. So let's show you about the king of the south and the king of the north. So here's the king of the south. I mean, it's lucky the king of the south is Ptolemy the first Soter, the Macedonian king of Egypt. Right? Ptolemy the first Soter, a Macedonian general of Alexander the Great, became ruler of Egypt and founder of the Ptolemaic dynasty, which reigned longer than any other dynasty established on the soil of the Alexandrian Empire and only succumbed to the Romans in 30 BC. See that? So he was strong, right? He was strong on the earth, his entire empire. So I'm not going to read all about this man's life and, where he was and who he came from, but he actually grew up with Alexander, right? He was part of Philip II's army. All right. So this guy, he was a big deal. Ptolemy the first was a big deal. And his family genealogy, or here's his landmass, the Ptolemaic kingdom. All right. That's the Ptolemaic kingdom. This is the king of the south that you read about in the book of Daniel, the 11th chapter. See that Paulicium right there. Paulicium, remember reading about that in the book of Daniel, the 7th chapter. All right. Nevertheless, here's your Ptolemaic kingdom that was ruled by the king of the south. So anytime you see king of the south, as of now, it's talking about the Ptolemaic kingdom. And then you have the king of the north. The king of the north, who had a greater dominion, was Seleucus the first Nicator. Seleucus the first Nicator. Let's go into him. He's the king of the north. Seleucus the first Nicator was the Macedonian Greek general, officer, and successor of Alexander the Great, who went on to found the eponymous Seleucid Empire, right? Led by the Seleucid dynasty. In the power struggles that followed Alexander's death, Seleucid rose from being a secondary player to becoming the total ruler of Asia Minor, Syria, Mesopotamia, and the Iranian plateau, assuming the title of Basileus, meaning emperor. The Seleucid Empire was one of the major powers of the Hellenistic world. That's that great dominion. Until it was overcome by the Roman Republic and the Parthian Empire in the late 2nd and early 1st century. All right. So this was a great empire ruled, see the great dominion, by Seleucus I Nicator. So as you read on in Daniel 11, you don't read about Cassander. Kind of fades out the picture as you get from Daniel 11 and 5 on down. You don't read about Antigonus. He fades away as you read from Daniel 11, 5 on down. Neither do you read about Lysimachus, Perdiccas, right? None of these men, they fade away. And the chapter begins to isolate on two major kingdoms, the Seleucid Empire and the Ptolemaic Empire. The Seleucid Kingdom and the Ptolemaic Kingdom. The king of the south are the Ptolemies, right? And the king of the north is this great dominion, the Seleucid Empire. All right, and these men fought and what you call the Syrian Wars. There's a series called the 6 Syrian Wars, right? So here's the Syrian Wars. And that's what Daniel 11 is about. For the most part, right? 90% of the chapter goes into the 6 Syrian Wars. All right. The Syrian Wars were a series of 6 wars between the Seleucid Empire and the Ptolemaic Kingdom of Egypt, right? Successor states to Alexander the Great's empire. During the 3rd and 2nd centuries, Slovakia, over the region then called Kole Sierra, or Syria, Slovakia, one of the few avenues into Egypt. These conflicts drained the material and manpower of both parties and led to their eventual destruction and conquest by Rome and Parthia. They are briefly mentioned in the biblical book of the Maccabees, and we could touch on that as well. So these are your Syrian wars. Your Syrian wars, right? And they came into power. Let's read a little bit of this. In 301 BC, Ptolemy I Soter, who 4 years earlier had crowned himself king of Egypt, exploited events during the Battle of Ipsus to take control of the region. The victory at Ipsus, however, had allocated Kol Syria to Ptolemy's former ally, Seleucus I Nicator, founder of the Seleucid Empire. Seleucus, who had been aided by Ptolemy during his ascent to power, did not take any military action to reclaim the region. So they had a mutual agreement, Seleucus I and Ptolemy, but their sons were not so. Once both were dead, however, their successors became embroiled in war. And you have something called the First Syrian War. The First Syrian War. A decade into his rule, Ptolemy II faced Antiochus I, the Seleucid king who was trying to expand his empire in Syria and Anatolia, right? So you had major wars going on between these two kings. Let's go to Daniel 11, right? So now we know Daniel 11 and 5 is going into the Ptolemaic Empire and the Seleucid Empire, right? The Ptolemaic Empire and the Seleucid Empire. The king of the south is the Ptolemies. The king of the north is the Seleucids. And he fought in a Syrian war, right? Daniel 11 and 6. And in the end of years, they shall join themselves together, for the king's daughter of the south shall come to the king of the north to make an agreement, but she shall not retain the power of the arm, neither shall he stand, nor his arm, but she shall be given up, and they that brought her, and he that begat her, and he that was strengthened in these times. So what is this talking about? This is talking about after that first Syrian war, there was a peace treaty by marriage between the king of the south and the king of the north. Right? The king's daughter of the south was actually given in marriage. There is a woman by the name of Berenice or Berenice, scholars would say. Right? She was given to the king of the north. Antiochus II was told to leave his wife. He had a wife named Laodice. Laodice was a wicked woman that you'll read about, man. And he had children by her, right? But the agreement was, when you dive into the history, was that this king of the south, which is Ptolemy, or his sons, would give Berenice to Antiochus II. But Antiochus II had to get rid of her son, so he wouldn't claim right to the throne, right to the Seleucid throne. So Laodice and the two children had to be cast to the side. And a lot of times in the ancient world, in order to make peace, you would have marriages done. It's an ancient custom to make peace by, hey, look, okay, we'll make peace, but you give your wife to my son. We'll make peace. I'll give my wife into your son. So they brought Berenice up to Antiochus, right? And that was to make a peace treaty and make an agreement between these two kings after that first Syrian war, kind of in that second Syrian war. But when it says she shall not retain the power of their arm, what happened was they fell out, man. Berenice and Antiochus, it didn't work out. Conflict of power, right? People fighting over who's going to rule, whose son has next, whose son is going to rule. And eventually, this woman, she was cut down, man. When Laodice kind of came back, she actually poisoned and killed some people, man. And Berenice was kind of caught up in that thing, or Bernice. And everybody that was with her, her son was poisoned. She herself, Antiochus, a lot of men fell by Laodice. So that's what that means. She should be given up, and they that brought her, and they that begat her. And that's really going into her son that was begat of her, and he that strengthened her in these times. So let's kind of dive into this history right here in Daniel 11:6. See if I believe I have something on that. Right? Let's actually dive into that history. Let's see. Okay, we covered that. All right, bear with me. So here's Berenice, right? Berenice is the king's daughter of the south. All right. So Ptolemy II Philadelphus, right? He is the one who actually gave his daughter to the king of the north. And they would do that. They would do that in the ancient world. It was common. It wasn't like, oh, do I love you? Okay, let me take her on a date. Let me get a feel for, okay, I made it to first base. We hold hands. Okay, second base. I walked her to her door. I got a kiss goodnight. Okay, third base. No, man. Hey, these women, hey, you didn't really have a say-so in the ancient world. You had a predominantly patriarchal society, even amongst these Edomites, which are natural known sodomites. But for military alliances and for compromise and for diplomatic reasons, they would take their daughter and give them to another man just to make peace between these two fathers, right? So let's read a little bit about this, right? We may have to, again, we're going to have to continue at a later time. But let's read Daniel 11:6, right? And read about Berenice. Berenice, daughter of Ptolemy II Philadelphus, and Arsinoe the first of Egypt. She was married to the Seleucid ruler Antiochus II Theos. That's what this agreement was. And you read about in Daniel 11, right? Daniel 11:6, when it says the king's daughter of the south. Let's read it again. Right? It says, in the end of the years, they shall join themselves together. So they made an agreement. The Ptolemies and the Seleucids. For the king's daughter of the south, that's Berenice, shall come to the king of the north, that's Antiochus II, to make an agreement. The agreement was pretty much a ceasefire. Let's talk about it. Let's work things out. Right? So let's go back to this. Right? supplanting his first wife, Laodicea. And Laodicea didn't like that, man. Whose children she persuaded him to bar from the succession of the throne in favor of her own. You see that? So they was fighting over whose children is going to come into power. Okay, my son is next on the throne, but your son is connected to this man. And it was a big deal. Now, Antiochus, when you go into the history, he fell out with Berenice. Right? And then Ptolemy II said, look, you got to take her back. That's part of the deal. But Laodicea had a big deal going on, man. Right? Laodicea, however, persuaded Antiochus to come to Ephesus, where he died in 246, perhaps a victim of her intrigue. So the legend goes that Laodicea actually murdered Antiochus. Right? That's how it goes. Now, there's no proof for that, but you know, that's what allegedly happens. The former queen then ordered her partisans to kill Berenice and her children. So that's what Daniel 11 is talking about. When Daniel 11 says, the king's daughter of the south shall come to the king of the north to make an agreement, but she shall not retain the power of the arm, because she was killed, man. She didn't retain that position of queen. The power of the arm is your strength, your power. As being a queen directly connected to the most powerful empire at the time, which was the Seleucid Empire. She didn't retain that. She was killed in jealousy by another so-called white woman. And that's that stuff you see on the ID channel. When you watch the ID channel, First 48, and these Edomites be killing each other, man. Over life insurance policies. They be hiring hitmen. Don't get it twisted. These Edomite women get real wicked too, man. Well, they've been wicked, but hey, they do things for power, for money, greed. It's not just the Edomite man, hey, it's the Edomite woman too. So Laodicea actually got Berenice and her children killed. So Berenice wasn't able to retain the power of the arm. And it says, neither shall he stand, nor his arm, because guess who else died? Antiochus. Right? He also died. Now, they don't know, did he get poisoned? Okay, you know, we don't know. Did he die of natural causes? No, he got killed too by Laodicea. She murdered a lot of people. That's what this means. But she shall be given up, and they that brought her. Right? Meaning that the allies, her consultants, the people who actually helped her be connected to the Seleucid Empire, they was all cut down too. And he that begat her. That's really going into Berenice's children. Right? When you go into the Hebrew, it's really going into her children. So everybody that was connected in this marriage deal, it turned to a disaster, and they were all murdered and killed off by Laodicea, her comrades and allies, and she wanted to set her son up, which was another Seleucus II, to be in power over the son of Berenice. So she was power tripping, and we'll read about that. Right? We will read about that. That's what this means. The former queen then ordered her partisans to kill Berenice and her children, who had taken refuge at Daphne near Antioch in Syria. Aroused by the murder, Ptolemy III Euergetes, Berenice's brother, launched a successful war, the Third Syrian War, against Laodicea and her son Seleucus II. So she wanted her son to be in power. That's why she killed Berenice and her children. Right? And she killed Antiochus. So she killed her so-called alleged husband, the wife, her children. This is some low-down, dirty stuff, man. This is some Edomite woman stuff at the finest. This stuff happened in the suburbs, man. You know? Beverly Hills murder. Right? This is some stuff you read about, you know, on the news. Right? This is like one of the Clintons murdering one of the Bushes. Some heavy stuff right here. And that eventually led to the Third Syrian War. All right, let's read about that some more. This is from University of Chicago EDU, right? You may say, well, I'm sick of Wikipedia. Hey, look, it's all over, man. It's not a big secret, right? This is Ptolemy III Euergetes. According to the arrangement made between Ptolemy II and Antiochus II, the former queen of Antiochus, Laodicea was to be left with her two sons in a secondary position in Asia Minor. And she didn't like that. She was put on the back burner. She probably told her son, hey, look, you're going to be next, right? You're going to rule after your father. You're going to be in power. You're going to receive glory. But then all of a sudden, she was put on the back burner. While Ptolemy's daughter, Berenice, reigned at Antioch and bore children for the Seleucid inheritance. Check this out. But both Laodicea and Berenice were Macedonian princesses, true to the type. It's going to tell you why. Laodicea induced Antiochus to come back to her at Ephesus. And then after Antiochus suddenly died in 246, and she killed him. Now without some suspicion falling on Laodicea, she sent her emissaries to Antioch to murder Berenice and her infant son. So the agreement fell apart. Everything that her retaining the power to arm Berenice, being queen of her children, that fell apart. All of Berenice's comrades and allies and the connections between Seleucus and Ptolemy, it all fell apart. Outright murder. Berenice fought, we were told, like a tigress, but in vain. The double murder was accomplished. Laodicea's son, Seleucus II, was proclaimed king of the Seleucid realm. And that's what Laodicea wanted, man. So why the hell she said, well, why should I get put on the back burner? I told my son he's going to rule. And if I got to murder my husband, if I got to murder his wife, if I got to poison their children, then it has to be done. And my son's going to be in power. So that's how these Edomite women and these men, this is a lot of treachery in Daniel 11, man. It's a lot of treachery, it's a lot of backstabbing, it's a lot of deceit, lies, murder. Right? As we go into this chapter, you're going to see there's a lot of perversion going on amongst these Edomites, man. It's not a fair game. Skin for skin. All right? The murder of the daughter and grandson of Ptolemy II was an outrage, right? Which could not but rouse Egypt to a new war. That was the situation which confronted the young king of Egypt, Ptolemy III, called afterward Euergetes, soon after he took over the government from his father in 247 BC. All right? This is what Daniel chapter 11 and 6 is going into. Daniel chapter 11 and 6, let's read it again. And in the end of the years, or in the end of years, they shall join themselves together. Who is that speaking about? The Ptolemaic dynasty and the Seleucid dynasty. Antiochus II, right, will be joined to Philadelphus II, all right, which was the son of Ptolemy. For the king's daughter of the south, that's Berenice, shall come to the king of the north. The king of the north is Antiochus II, to make an agreement, right? Meaning to what? Have a ceasefire, an end of war, to work out diplomatic resolutions after that first Syrian war. But she shall not retain the power of her arm. Neither shall he stand on his arm, because he was poisoned, she was poisoned. Or she was murdered, and her son was murdered. That's what this means, but she shall be given up. Given up to what? To the sword, man. And they that brought her, because Laodicea's emissaries, Salakia, let's pull this back up, actually got them killed. And he that begot her, so her child was killed, and Seleucus II ended up coming into power. And he that strengthened her in these times, right, which was all of her allies and people that supported the power of Berenice being married to Antiochus II, right? So, this is going to conclude part 1 through the spirit and power of Yahweh Bashem Yahushua concerning Daniel 11, right? So this is volume 1, and we'll continue volume 2. right? Volume 2, and Lord willing, we could cover more in Daniel 11, right? The deceit, the treachery, the wars, the scandals, the murder, the deception, the pride of Esau, and we'll go dive deeper, Salaki, into this chapter through the spirit and power of Yahweh Bashima Mashiach Malak Yahushua. Right? So this has been Daniel 11th chapter, or Daniel 11, the entire chapter, finally explained, volume 1. Right? We'll continue volume 2. Maybe next Shabbat, maybe throughout the week, right? Maybe tomorrow we'll continue volume 2 through the spirit and power of Yahweh Bashima Mashiach Malak Yahushua. And we will continue this entire breakdown until the entire chapter is explained. Every prophecy is broken down, line upon line, precept upon precept, through the spirit and power of Yahweh Bashima Mashiach Malak Yahushua. Most High willing you were edified. Keep the Sabbath holy. No buying, no selling, no sex on the Sabbath, no cooking, no doing your own pleasure, speaking your own words. Keep this day sacred and holy through the spirit and power of Yahweh Bashima Mashiach Malak Yahushua. Kwam Yasha. Shalom.